This is the Voiceover Marketing Podcast, episode 31. Hey there, it's John. How are you? Thanks for spending some time with me today. I do appreciate it. It has been a few weeks since the last episode, and my apologies to you for not getting something out to you sooner. You may or may not have heard about all the snow that we've been getting here in the Boston area. I just heard this statistic the other day that Boston has more than 100 inches of snow in the shortest amount of time, probably in history for the cities here in the United States. We've received more than 100 inches of snow in fewer than 30 days. It's been insane. It has been draining. It has been nerve-wracking, and a lot of work to shovel all this stuff. We've run out of places to put it. There's a building behind my house that has a large flat roof, and this past weekend there were two cranes, maybe 50, 60-foot tall cranes with these large dumpster bag type contraptions. They look like big tarps with handles on them. And people were on top of the roof of this building filling this bag up with snow, and then their crane was lifting it up and dumping it into the parking lot. The snow farms are absolutely enormous. We call these things snow farms because the snowbanks on the sidewalks and on the streets are so high that people coming in and out of their driveways, they can't see oncoming traffic. People coming out their walkways or out of sidewalks to cross streets, you can't see the cars coming, and cars can't see pedestrians. It's really dangerous because Boston is an old city. I don't need to tell you. And so our streets are narrow and they twist and they turn, and it's really become an issue. And the other night, Ann and I, it was 2:30 in the morning. We're in bed, and all of a sudden I hear this sound. It sounds like someone took a gigantic boulder and dropped it on the roof of our house, and it just was like this loud bang and thud, and the house shook. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is that? So I get up, and then she gets up. And I said, did you hear that? And she says, no, what are you talking about? And then so we're going around the house, and all of a sudden it makes the same noise again. It's this large bang. And Ann's in the other part of the house, and she says, did you do that? And I said, no, that's what I'm talking about. So we're both getting flashlights, and we're climbing up into the attic, and we're looking at rafters and all that kind of stuff. And thankfully, nothing caved in, and there's a technical term for it, but basically it was so cold. We've had sub-zero temperatures and a lot of wind, so the snow's not really melting. It's just accumulating. Most of the time, we're used to snow here. It's not, people are like, well, you live in New England. What's the big deal? We get snow. It's not that. It's we've gotten so much snow, and it's been so cold that usually what happens, we'll get a snowstorm, and then it'll warm up a little bit, and then it'll, some of it'll melt, and then another storm will come in, and it's manageable. We've had one right after the other, and there's been no let up. So there's been no melting, and the storms that we've been getting are all 12 inches plus. Sometimes we'll get 3 inches, 6 inches, 8 inches. Occasionally we'll get a foot of snow. That's a big deal. And then, another 3 inches here and there. But, a week and a half, 2 weeks might go by before you get another storm. This has been like every weekend. This is the first full week that I've worked since before Christmas, because I was taking some long weekends prior to Christmas. So the holidays came. January was a fairly decent month here in Boston. I take it back. I did work a full week in January, and then I took a week off in January to do some planning. And then the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday came. And then from there, it was Katie bar the door. Here comes the weather. And it's been week after week after week of this. And it's just been I'm exhausted. So we found out that everything's fine, but it's been so cold that getting back to that noise hitting my roof, it was so cold, and the heat in the house, there was such a differential between the two temperatures from inside the house and outside the house, and that the snow was on the roof, that the roof actually contracted. It shifted. It was like almost plate tectonics taking place on your roof. And when it contracted, things shifted, and it was like the ice kind of cracked and all that kind of stuff, and it just made this loud cracking noise. And so we're up at 3:30 in the morning walking around the house because we're wide awake at this point, and we'd been out shoveling all day, so the sleep hasn't been that great. So it's just been crazy. You know what I'll do is I've taken a bunch of pictures. So what I'll do is I'll post a number of the pictures on the page for this episode 31, just to give you an idea. If you're used to this, let's say you're from Minneapolis or Anchorage or whatever, yeah, you might not be so impressed, but it's impressive to us. We had a listener in the Philippines who said, I want to touch that snow, John. Yeah, come on over. I'll hand you a shovel and you can help out. I wanted to make one thing perfectly clear. The snowbanks around my home, I do not have a plow. I do not have a snowblower. So the piles of snow were made by hand and shovel by yours truly and by my lovely bride, Anne. She is one tough cookie. And she's beautiful, but she's tough. And, anyway, I mean, we needed both hands on it, and that's all we had. It's just the two of us did all of that stuff. So I'll put some pictures up. You can go ahead and check them out. And so the number of downloads as of this recording is 22,965 from 70 different countries around the world. And my guest today is Monique Coppola. And Monique is the winner of the Audition Spotlight that you may have heard me talk about in previous episodes of the podcast. And the Audition Spotlight was at the November 2014 That's Voiceover Conference in New York City. We have a great discussion with lots of great info on networking, going out and meeting people, getting out of your comfort zone, the importance of showing up. You've heard me talk about this in previous episodes. Putting yourself in a place where opportunity will present itself. Other things we discuss are being your authentic self and bringing that to your voiceover career and your life in general and much more. And I'm going to get to that in a second. The other thing I want to do is I want to invite you to connect with me via social media. I just started a voiceover marketing podcast group on LinkedIn. I already have one on Facebook. I encourage you to join the Facebook one, but really want to bring your attention to the Voiceover Marketing Podcast group on LinkedIn. Different audiences there. This is the interesting thing about marketing. You got to test different venues, and I've been testing. I've been finding that responses from one social media platform are very different from another. So if you're listening to this podcast and you are on LinkedIn, find me on LinkedIn, John Melley, Melley. I'd love to connect with you. And also do a search for Voiceover Marketing Podcast Group on LinkedIn and join. Send me a note saying, tell me about your voiceover experience, what you're interested in. So let's go chat with Monique and stay tuned at the end. I got something fun I want to share with you, okay? Well, welcome back. As I said earlier in the episode, my guest today is Monique Coppola, and I met Monique at That's Voiceover, and she was the winner of the Audition Spotlight, and I was one of the 6 finalists on stage with her, and Monique was the winning performer. Congratulations, Monique.
Oh, thank you very much. I was in very good company. You did a wonderful job.
Oh, thanks. It really was cool, and we want to talk about that whole experience for the listeners, the importance of getting outside your comfort zone and doing things that are, kind of challenging, because that was unlike any audition I've ever had. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it definitely was unlike any audition, other than, theatrical auditions when you're up on a stage and you're doing, But yeah, it was very interesting, and it was really, just a real learning experience. And to be able to sit there with, the other contestants, like yourself, and to be able to hear your interpretation of the script, it was just amazing. And that's something that you usually don't have. You go in, or, whether you're in a studio, a casting director's office, or doing it from home, you don't get to hear the competition. And there were really no winners in the sense that, everybody brought their own interpretation to the script. And it's just sort of the same thing as when, you're judging performances for the Academy Awards we have coming up. It's, there are these great individual performances, and how do you judge?
Right.
How do you judge that? How do you compare?
Well, I've said in several episodes, I came away a winner regardless of whether or not I actually, quote unquote, won the grand prize, because it was an opportunity for me to get outside my comfort zone. It was very affirming and validating to have made it that far and to be able to perform at that level and get the feedback that you and I and the other folks on the stage got from the likes of Pat Fraley and the woman from the Travel Channel and Jeff Umberger from the Umberger Agency. And then Dave Walsh, who was the guest on the last episode 30, he said something similar that you just said. It was interesting to see everybody's performance and see how they all interpreted the copy in different ways. And
absolutely.
It was so
he's
much
lovely,
fun.
By the way. And so many of the people there were just wonderful and open, and you didn't have that sort of sometimes you're in situations that are very competitive. I don't know if you have an acting background at all, John, but sometimes in that world it can be very competitive, and people aren't necessarily always willing to be open and share if they view you as a threat or competition. And Joan and Rudy, everybody was just so open and gracious, and it was a really nice experience. It was really a real educational experience.
It really was. And I want to talk more about that process. I kind of jumped past your intro here. I have a little bio, but you're originally from Massachusetts, like where I'm from, and you've studied music and theater, so that's where your acting background comes from, and dance at Dean College here. You've worked in theater, film, industrials, and TV projects in Boston, Los Angeles, and New York, and you've voiced hundreds of radio and TV commercials, cartoon pilots, business presentations. The list of different voiceover genres goes on, and you're an award-winning radio news reporter, newscaster, and talk show host, and you covered the New Hampshire presidential primaries in 2008, so you got to interview Bill Clinton.
Yes, I did.
Doris Kearns Goodwin, Robert Kennedy Jr., John McCain, and Betty White.
Yes, sort of mixing it up a little bit. Yeah, I covered the primary, and so, of course, covered everybody, Barack Obama, all of the candidates, and also had a radio show. So I was able to, and that was in New Hampshire. I lived in New Hampshire for 8 years.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I was there, and I did a lot of radio. I actually kind of fell into that, and it was actually voiceovers that got me into that.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about your story. Can you share everybody a little bit about your journey?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I started out, as you said, in Massachusetts. I was born in Boston, lived in Dorchester. Yeah, down the street from Marky Mark.
Oh, cool.
Wicked cool. So then ended up on the South Shore of Massachusetts. From there, my dad moved us to the South Shore. And I just always, from the time since I was a little kid, just always liked to imitate, anybody who's on television.
Yes.
So I was always imitating, and I think I got some laughs, and that was it. So I enjoyed it very much. I was a very shy kid, but when I was on stage, I was portraying someone else, and I was really involved in make-believe, and I thrived on that. So that's what happened. I ended up studying theater at Dean College and lived in Boston. And I got into the union in Boston. I got into the Screen Actors Guild in Boston, and that was doing industrial films. And then after that, I packed up the Toyota and drove across the country and started out in Los Angeles. But what happened, I found in Los Angeles, is I think, we have this sort of idea in our head, well, I can play 0 to 60, and I can play, I'm actually very mixed ethnically.
Okay.
And you ask different people what they think I am, or what, their perception of me. And it depends on the person. So that I always would have this joke, I could blend in any neighborhood, but with acting, it wasn't the best thing for me at that time because there was a lot of confusion.
Okay.
Some people, would say, I would go out for Hispanic roles mostly. Mm-hmm. And, during that time, a lot of those roles still are. You're the housekeeper, you're the crack addict, you're the prostitute, you're the gang member's girlfriend. And that wasn't really part of my experience, and I think that probably showed. But what happened was I'd met a lot of people doing different jobs. You're doing different day jobs and so forth, and I would meet all these people, and I would just sort of fall into doing voiceover work. For instance, I worked at a talent agency with this one talent agent, and he, so I would answer the phone a lot and mix it up with, different producers and so forth.
Okay.
And this guy would call, hey, Monique, I did this pilot. It's an around town show. It's in Beverly Hills. I cast this tall blonde woman, as the host, but I can't stand her twangy Southern accent.
Okay.
So can you come in? And I remember going in there, and I had a script, and I literally was watching on the screen her talking about Rodeo Drive and different shops, and I had to look at her face and match her voice, match her lip movement.
Oh, wow.
That was kind of a tough gig, but
yeah.
It's sort of, that's the way it would happen for me. I temped one day at Universal Studios and ended up doing these cartoon pilots because of just this sort of one day. And, why don't you audition for this pilot, for this cartoon pilot?
Yeah.
And then that, the writer said, hey, why don't you come in on this one? And it was just sort of, it was really getting out there and meeting people, but not necessarily really pursuing it. I always knew I wanted to do it, but I always thought, this is something I can do later on. And I would pursue, and I really wanted to act. I wanted to be on television. I wanted to, be on the stage, wanted to be, in film. But this just sort of happened as a result of that and meeting people.
It's so interesting to hear everybody's got their own twist on the story. But if you boil it all down, for a lot of people, and this happens over and over in the different episodes of this podcast and different folks that I've talked to, and it's the same advice. I just shared this with a young man the other day who messaged me on my LinkedIn page for the podcast, and they want advice, and it's about showing up and putting yourself in positions where opportunity will present itself.
That's true. That's very true.
What's the biggest thing I can do for my career? Show up. Be there,
Right.
Do whatever that takes, within reason. But I mean, if they ask you to, the kid was asking about the promotions department here. It's like, if you got to count keychains and T-shirts and you still want to get into voiceover or on air, be here. And once you can prove that you can count keychains and fold T-shirts, then they'll give you more responsibility. I mean, it really does come down to that because so many people mess that up of showing up on time.
Right. And it is, it's people that, make the world go around. So, sometimes it's hard when you work at home. I work at home a lot and have been for the last few years. And when you're not out there, you have to get yourself up and say, let me go to this event, let me go out there and meet people, because if you don't meet people, no one knows, you spoke about this a little bit in your last podcast with Dave about, how the business has changed so much and you're at home all the time.
Yeah.
And, you're auditioning for clients all around the world, and oftentimes you don't meet them, you don't speak to them. And, so sometimes you can get into, trapped and be in your own little bubble. But it does take getting out there and meeting people and shaking hands and getting people to know you, because they're going to be the people that are recommending you for jobs and or thinking about you for jobs. And one thing can lead to another. You kind of look back on your life and you say, well, gee, I never would have landed that gig if I had not gone to this thing.
Right.
And then met that person. And, it's not just, you can't just look at it as work, but also having a full life and meeting people and mixing it up and being out there.
Do you go to non-voiceover events? Do you, non-acting events as part of your quote unquote mixing it up?
Yeah, well, I'm really passionate about animals. So I'm also the national assignment editor for animal welfare issues for a news service. And just really passionate about animal welfare. So I will go to those types of events, volunteer my time, at a shelter. And so I do meet a lot of like-minded folks that way.
So let's shift gears a little bit and go back to the audition spotlight. You mentioned earlier that it was a learning experience for you. It was for me as well, but everybody takes different things away from it. Could you share with us what some of the things you might have learned from that whole experience?
Sure. Let me just ask you this. Was that your first one that you had attended?
The first, That's Voiceover? Yes. The reason I went was I saw that the Voice Arts Awards were coming out and that they were going to be open for nominations. Actually, a listener said, hey, podcasts are going to be a category for the Voice Arts Awards. And I said, oh, okay. And then I read about them. There was an announcement that there were awards, and I heard some pushback from the voiceover community that, they didn't like the fact that people had to pay to submit an entry and all that kind of stuff. And I said, no, you're looking at this the wrong way, in that if there's an entry fee for a submission, that means everybody who submits is on the same playing field, but you can look at it as a marketing expense. And so I reached out to Well,
that's the way it is for film. I mean, if you're submitting your film to a film festival, there's a fee because it costs money to set the whole thing up, and it also costs money to have people sit there and listen or review.
Right.
so you're paying, those types of costs. I mean, that's pretty common.
Yeah, that was my point.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to Rudy Gaskins, and he and Joan put this all together. And so we talked about that whole thing, what you just so eloquently boiled down to in a sentence and a half. We did a whole episode on. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to submit the podcast. So I was nominated for an award. Or the podcast was nominated for award. So we went down, Ann and I went down for the weekend for the awards. And then I said, you know what? I'm going. And I said I might as well go to That's Voiceover. And then the audition spotlight thing for me was really on the back burner because I was more focused on the podcast nomination and the awards and all that kind of stuff. But then I got a thing saying that the deadline had been extended for 24 hours. And I thought, you know what? You bought the ticket. You might as well play. So I submitted my audition and then, went on from there. So
that's great, John.
Yeah. It was
good for you.
Thank you. Yeah. So it was fun. And so, that was my first That's Voiceover conference. To answer your question in a long way.
Oh, that was interesting, though. Yeah. Well, me too, actually, because like I said, I had been up in New Hampshire and I got into radio, and that was actually through voiceover. And I'll just tell you really quickly, if you don't mind, how that happened.
Sure.
I ended up, my boyfriend at the time, we moved up to, I'd come to New York from LA, and just to try this market. It just seemed, acting-wise, it seemed a little more diverse in terms of the actors ethnically and so forth, the product that was coming out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and, and I moved, and I was actually at an interesting time because I had started booking some really good voiceover gigs in LA. And then there was that big strike.
Yeah.
And then I came here, and then we had, September 11th happened, which was, obviously politics and the tragedy aside, economically, New York just fell into it was chaos. I mean, a lot of companies started laying off people left and right. Even temp gigs were difficult to get. And so to make a long story short, I ended up moving up to New Hampshire, got this little, in this beautiful little town called Wolfboro.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And and then so I submitted my demo to this. They were looking, it was the paper was, this little radio station in town was looking for voiceovers for commercials. So I went in and met the fellow that he and his son just took the station over. And we had I did a couple of commercials for them, and then we had a great chat, and he hired me to come in, and it was going to be a 2-person run station. We were going to do, cover events out in the field and do a Frank Sinatra music hour. I mean, we just had all these great ideas.
It's fun.
Yeah, but then he ended up dying the next day. He had a heart attack. Yeah, I got a call, and, his son, who knew nothing about the business, and one of the salespeople, he died. He had a massive heart attack.
Oh.
Wonderful. I mean, very sad.
Sure, yeah.
Obviously, it was a very sad time, but what happened was I ended up getting thrown into this business and learning everything, learning all the technical aspects of it. Yeah, I mean...
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, I learned how to run a radio station, and I had always been the person on the other side of the glass when the person said, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden so I learned how to edit, obviously, and started doing my own commercials and voicing and that kind of thing. So anyway, long story short, I think it's too late for that now, but
It's fine. I'm loving the story.
Where was I even? So the voiceover led me into the radio, and then from there I just started doing, I had my own talk show, and I had, I started getting out there and interviewing, and it was great. It really it fueled my passion and my creativity in that same way, even just being live on air. I mean, that feeling.
Sure.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
So what did you, kind of bringing it all back, what did you learn from the audition spotlight experience?
Well, we were just talking about showing up, and that was part of it, because I had moved down to New York. I'm in New York now, and doing a lot of, working for the news service from home. So that's interviewing people on the phone, cutting up the sound bites, writing news stories. And I started getting more and more into voiceovers. But I didn't really have a base of people here in New York. I didn't really know anyone in New York. So when I saw That's Voiceover, and I started, looking online at all the different things that were going on here in New York, started showing up to things.
There you go.
Yeah, it was cool. One thing the union was doing, I ended up meeting the people at Audible, which is they produce audiobooks.
Right.
And so ended up over there and just sort of meeting people that way. And But it was showing up, and I saw this, and then I saw the audition for the Travel Channel audition spotlight, and I said, let me do that, and I bought my tickets for both events, the awards, and also that's voiceover the next day,
right.
And I think it was just again, like you were mentioning before, getting out of your comfort zone and showing up, and I learned a lot being there and just being with the people that were there and the amount of talent that was there, and there's some very accomplished people in the business. You have Dave Walsh, who you interviewed for your previous podcast. Lori Allen, she was incredible. We all after we went through the process, so we, as you know, put together an audition, sent in the audition, and then we were selected. There was 40 people selected from that audition, and we were at the event, and we auditioned again with a different script for the Travel Channel, and then 6 people were selected at the end of the night. And we went up on stage, and then we had about 5 minutes with an industry professional. And who did you have?
I had Frank Rodriguez.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah, and so I had Lori Allen, who she was actually on the panel, and they were honoring her body of work. She's just been on all kinds of cartoons, and she's just been working. She's been very successful in the business for a long time, and she was just amazing, I have to tell you, because as soon as I got that news, I'm sure you were pretty emotional too when you first, when you heard your name called.
I was more stunned than anything else.
I was just, but then, so then we got assigned someone really quickly. Joan, who was just lovely, just, brought us, okay, here's your person. And Lori just grabbed my arm, and I started to get really choked up, and I almost started to cry. And she just said, okay, we don't have time for that.
Awesome. That's hysterical.
So she really reined me, and I said, you're right, because I've been on the other side of casting sessions where I've seen people come in, and some of these people are accomplished actors, I won't mention their names, but people I was a little intimidated. They walked into the room, and I see that person, and they're really nervous because there's 5 of us, the director, the producer, the cat, sitting there, and I see them really nervous, and you realize that does not serve that person at all. Being nervous does not serve you.
Right.
And you need to, and I've been in audition situations where I've been so nervous, had so much riding on something, this thing would change my life. It would get, I wouldn't have to worry about my rent or, just this desperation that turns into this nervous energy. You leave the thing and you want to just crawl into a hole and die because you just know you could have done a better job.
Right.
And I think that's so important and Laura, and that could have really turned into that for me that night in that, just being completely emotional and choked up about it. And Lori just grabbed my arm and said, we don't have time for that right now. And she just got me into this place and she just broke down the copy. And I don't know about you, but having done a lot of commercials when I was up in New Hampshire, I do a lot for television and local markets, regional markets, Boston and so forth. But a lot of times in a lot of stations, they want to cram a lot of information into one spot.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've found this or not.
Every time.
So you become a speed reader where you're trying to make, the copy sound interesting, but you got to get it in 60 seconds.
Right.
And to me, I'd look at some of this copy and say, this is a minute and a half at least.
Yeah.
And so you work like that. You start to just speed things through because that's what's expected of you. And I sort of carried that with me a little bit. And Lori just really said, this is and brought back the acting. The acting background came back in.
That's cool.
This is a part of the story, and it's not and when even if you're looking at a small piece of copy, there's a beginning, a middle, and end, but it also has to be, conversational, and that's where the authenticity comes from. Who you always have to remember, in radio too, when you're interviewing people or when you're doing a show or when you're reading copy, who are you talking to? Have a person in your mind or have your audience in your mind when you're speaking to them, and it's going to become more personal, and people in the emotion will come out in that script. And Lori really took me from doing it as an announcer into, who do you like to travel with?
Oh, that's wonderful.
Who are you talking to here? Isn't this kind of neat? Look at this portion of the script. Well, how do you feel about that? And just really took it down for me. And when I got up on that stage, I felt very calm, and I attribute a lot of that to her because she was just amazing. I feel like, gosh, I would have had a huge career in acting if she had been, if I had known her in Los Angeles and she was, had the time to coach me and prep me before some of these auditions, because she was just amazing. But, so she was someone who was just, it was really great to meet, and as well as so many of the others. I mean, my goodness.
What a gift. I mean, that's wonderful for her to be able to help you get yourself centered so much so that, you could focus on the other information that she wanted to share with you to help you get your performance.
Definitely, because, I mean, it would have been so easy to lose it. I mean, you're up on the stage, you're sitting there, and you had the lovely Joan Baker, and we had all these just different professionals in the audience. I mean, you have, it was amazing.
Oh, but. Yeah. I mean, just a quick aside. I mean, to your point there, it's like somebody said, well, what was it like? I said, well, okay, imagine going to a football clinic and having Tom Brady coach you.
Right, right.
I mean, it's that caliber of talent that was at this event helping us with our performances,
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. I mean, you had Cedering Fox in the audience. I mean, she's, the voice of the VOG at the Academy, the voice of God, they call it, the Academy Awards. And you had, just, I mean...
Frank Rodriguez, and then you had Joe Cipriano, and I know I'm going to miss a name here, so I'll just stop. But
Alan Coulter, I mean, the man who does David Letterman. I mean, it was insane.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, it really was. It was like, and it would have been so easy to just, become completely nervous and intimidated, but everybody was so, rooting for everyone. That's the feeling I had.
That's the word. Yeah, that's the word. They were rooting for you. And Dave and I had a conversation before we started to record our interview, and he said, it was so gratifying for us because Dave Walsh and Chuck Duran were my judges for the other audition that got me into the final 6. And so they were sitting there, and I don't know who you had. Did you have Rodney and
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Who was the other?
They were wonderful too.
Yeah, Rodney Salisbury. I've actually studied with Rodney.
Oh, really?
Yeah, years ago. I took his promo and trailer course, which was great.
In Boston?
I did it on the phone, actually. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
is he in LA or is he in New York?
He's in LA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Dave said to me, it was really cool for us to sit there and watch the folks that we had put on to the next round and to watch them perform. So they were getting something out of it too, So it was a really positive event, really.
Yeah, it really was. I'm really glad that I went.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Really, really glad.
So have you done the recording session for the Travel Channel yet, or?
No, actually not yet, but they did contact me, and as well as my new agent, Jeffrey Umberger, they reached out, and so it's hopefully going to be happening pretty soon.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome, and congratulations again on it.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Well, you too. Big deal. You made the final, so that's a big deal.
Oh yeah, I don't have any regrets. As my wife Ann and I were walking back to the hotel after the event, and I just kept saying to myself, "Wow!" And she's like, "What?" And I said, that was awesome. That whole experience was fantastic because, like you, I mean, it was kind of nerve-wracking. And one of the big takeaways for me was that I was able to manage that energy in a way and still make the performance and still get to the final 6. And when I finished, I walked away from it with no regrets.
Right.
It wasn't what they were looking for, and that's fine. That's what happens in auditions. But I did not have that. You alluded to it earlier when you were talking about how Lori, helped you center yourself.
Yeah.
And, there wasn't one of those things where I came away from it going, oh, gee, I wish I had done this instead of that. I didn't have any of that. It was...
Oh, that's nice, because we can be our own worst enemy, our own little... That inner critic.
Yeah.
Brutalize you.
Oh, yeah. I totally agree. And that's what I was so pleased by, was that for myself, I managed all of that, and I left it all out there. And I really felt, you know what? I gave it my best, and I have no regrets about this. So that was the biggest takeaway from me, which was huge, because
it's huge, and it's huge just to, again, to show up. I mean, right prior, I have to tell you, and it would be a good thing for listeners too, because in this business, as well as acting, you can, there's a lot of rejection, and there were times where I've just become, just an emotional wreck for days after blowing it in an audition, in a television audition or whatever it was. And you can hear a lot of stuff from different people that, they'll try to say, you should, whatever it is. And I'll tell you, right before this event, I'd gone to the Screen Actors Guild, or I think it's SAG-AFTRA, it's SAG-AFTRA now, but I don't know if it was an AFTRA thing or not. I don't know if you've heard about this, the Open Door.
I think I might have gotten emails on it. I haven't gone to one, but yeah.
And it's a great thing, don't get me wrong, where the union will say, okay, we're going to round up these professional, casting directors and agents and so forth, and there's going to be a lottery, and we're going to allow you the opportunity to go in and meet with these people. And I thought, I don't really know anyone in New York. Great opportunity here. Mm-hmm. So I did, and my preference was voiceovers, to meet a voiceover agent. So I ended up going in, and this is the same month. It was right before, or just, a couple of weeks prior to this event. And I got into the voiceover agent, his office, and he said basically to me, he kind of fast forwarded through different parts of my demo and sort of dismissively said, how that's nice. It sounds very regional. But like how cute your little Boston jewelry ad, how cute. But he said, he said, the marketing people that are coming into the office, the phone calls that we're getting, they're like 10 years old now. And he basically said that I, was aged out of the market, is basically what he was trying to say.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really sweet and and encouraging. But, it's not like, I'm 95 years old and I don't have a voice. That's what I was thinking to myself. I said,
Right.
And he said, well, they're 11 years old and the people that are coming in and auditioning for these spots, they're sort of the Brooklyn hipsters, and they have blue hair, and they've got, piercings all over their face. So basically he was saying that I wasn't going to fit into what, his agent, what he was looking for, and that's fine. But that's one guy's opinion.
Right.
That's one guy's opinion. And I think we can, get really chewed up, I think, but even less so now where you're, I don't know if you do the pay-for-play sites, but when you're auditioning for a lot of different people and you don't see them and you don't talk to them, it's a whole different type of rejection,
Yeah, it's the void.
I think it's a lot easier to stomach.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, okay, it went into the vortex and you didn't hear back, and so there's no real pain there. But
right, right.
I hear you. So you had that leading up to this,
right? So I kind of, I didn't have any expectations. I just thought, what, show up, be open and enthusiastic, and this is a great opportunity to meet some people. And that's how I looked at the whole thing, and that's really what it was. It was a wonderful opportunity, and it just, it was a very supportive environment, which was wonderful.
That's great.
Yeah.
So aside from networking, are there any things that you do to promote your services?
I'm going to be completely honest with you. I've never been the best marketer of myself. Mm-hmm. I've done some marketing for other people in radio, as you have. But when it comes to myself, I've not always been the best. And that's something that's been a work in progress for me, to really sort of sell myself. Yeah. And I'm getting better at it.
It's tough, though, isn't it?
It is. When you're selling yourself, it's tough. Yeah. It can be, especially if you have if you're, maybe a little insecure,
Hey!
And
who isn't, really?
I know, you're right. I mean, that's just so, it's like, do they really want what I'm selling? Do I have what it takes?
Oh, God. Yeah. Well, there's that voice. Then you got to tell that one to shut up.
Yeah, shut up, all right? Shut up. Get out of here. You do. You really do. But, yeah, a little bit I do. I have a website, and I'll, send that around. And now social networking sites are great, too, because, you can just send out your stuff there, join groups, commenting, and you can find out about just different events that are going on, or companies that maybe you can send your reel to. That's always important. And when you do get clients, to follow up with them in a couple of months. Yeah. How are you doing? Just sort of, checking in, seeing how everything, if you have any projects coming up, that kind of thing. I do that. That's the hidden riches in your business, is the clients that you have, getting them to use your services again. Right, absolutely. And that also being very professional when you do the job. When you do get the job, being very pleasant, being open, whether you're in a studio or whether you're at home, being available, being professional, and, being flexible. Those are the types of people that are going to get called back to work again and again. So that's very important when you do get the job, to be as professional and pleasant and friendly and flexible as possible. Yeah, years and years ago, even outside, this was before voiceover, but somebody gave me some of the best advice I ever got was, be someone people want to work with. Be somebody people want to be around.
Don't be a jerk.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You could be the most talented person in the room, but if you're a jerk and no one wants to work with you, and I can cite some, big actor examples in Hollywood where, a couple of these people are huge talents, but they were so difficult to work with that no one wanted to work with them again. And that's the bottom line. You hit it right on the head. Be someone that people want to work with. Be reliable, be professional, and they're going to remember you.
That's the thing. And that's what gets you the referrals, too. It's like, hey, you know what? Call Monique. She was great. She'll take care of you. And,
absolutely.
And that's what
absolutely.
happens. So I had a request on the Voice Over Marketing Podcast Facebook page, and somebody said, and you alluded to it earlier, about the natural read and not sounding like an announcer. We got a SpeakPipe message from listener Tim Banks asking this very specific question. So let's listen to it, and then we'll go back to the interview with Monique and hear what she has to say.
Hey, John, this is Tim, and I just found you a couple of days ago, and I've listened to quite a few of your pods, and I'm looking forward to really listening to some more of what you got. One of the things that I've struggled with is sounding natural, and I've got told I have a really good voice, but I don't sound like natural. What do you suggest to help me with that? Anything you can help me with would be great. Thanks.
So they said, hey, can you do an episode on that whole thing? And I thought, well, maybe I can do an episode on it, but I have you on the phone right now. So maybe you could shed some light on, I know what I'd try to do, but let me hear what your thoughts are on approaching copy so it doesn't sound reedy.
Yeah, and it's changed so much. If you listen, that's another important aspect of this business is listening to trends. And the trend is now, I listen to a lot of women, and there's that voice, there's a certain voice where, come into Rite Aid Pharmacy and do, or go shop at this place. It's what I do. And it's just this it's this tone, it's this, and I'm not going to pretend that I can be that authentically because I can't. That's a very specific style. And some people are obviously great at it. And I see that shifting a little bit. I'm listening to this shift. But we're definitely into real, quote unquote, real, from the reality television shows to, if you even look at print, catalog prints and, print ads, the call is no longer for models. 90% of the time, they're looking for the real McCoy. They even want a real, for television shows, they're looking for extras. They're even looking for real EMTs.
Oh, really? Oh.
Looking for real doctors. Oh, yeah, I see. You look on the casting networks and things like that. Everybody wants real. They want people with real-life experience. They want people that are really nurses to be on these shows, even as extras. They want doctors. I don't know where these people would have time to do this other work, but that's what they're called. That's the trend, is real. So I think, it's connecting to being real and to be your authentic self and to know, and I think that really boils down to knowing that you are enough. And that's with acting, that's with, with anything, is that you don't need to push it. You need to trust that you are interesting enough, your voice is interesting enough, and you don't need to put on an air and project and be more than you are or be different than you are. That used to be the trend.
Yeah.
You remember, and ladies and gentlemen, we're coming into the show, and it's ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
It was a very different, but you definitely have to pay attention to that. And right now, it's real, 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 and that goes across the board, all of entertainment. They want real.
Yeah, it even goes into film. I did extra work about 1.5 years ago for Denzel Washington's The Equalizer. And one of the things that I didn't tell you in my journey was that I was a meat cutter to pay for college. And they wanted meat cutters as extras. And so I was figuring, okay, well, they're going to be, a bunch of, I'm in SAG-AFTRA, but so I took a picture, sent it in, and I told them what I had done like 25 years ago. And I just revealed how old I am.
That's okay.
And
just don't tell that agent that I went in to see in New York.
I definitely don't have that whole hipster real thing that they're looking for now. I don't wear flip-flops in public. Anyway, I won't tell you what I think about all that, but that's okay. Anyway, but I was kind of surprised that they actually brought in all of these guys who are meat cutters.
Yeah.
I was thinking as you were talking about that, I'm wondering how much that social media has played into that, because it makes all of that so much more accessible to the producers.
Right. I'm sure it's played a big role. And I mean, now you have people who are putting their own, you're not getting cast in a TV show. All right, that's fine. I'll do my own series.
Yeah.
And you've got people doing stuff on YouTube. You've got people doing their own web series. And people are voyeuristic. They want to see, reality, so to speak. And I think, and because that trend has changed so much, I mean, we can definitely tell when someone's not being authentic, whether it's on the phone. You're on the phone and you can hear if someone's listening to you or not, right?
Sure, yeah.
You're not saying anything, but you can tell. You can hear it. So voice is the same thing in that it's subtleties. It's a connection. It's connecting with the listener. It's really feeling what you're talking about. And that's going to come through in the voice, I think, almost more so than anything else, because when we don't see somebody, we're listening for different cues. Our brain is actually listening in a very different way, or tuned in a very different way than when we can visualize. When we see someone, we look at their eye contact, their movements, and we read their body language. But when it's just the voice, you're painting a very different picture, and that's through copy. Someone's driving in their car and they're listening to whatever advertisement it is, or they're listening to an audio book. You're painting a picture for them in a very, very different way, and there's a different connection with just the voice. So I think it's practice. It's practice being yourself, and having other people. I think it's great to go into a class, get critiqued,
right?
Be with other professionals, whether it's an acting class, an improv class, a voiceover class, because we can sort of go on and on and on when we're by ourselves and we're not we don't really have anybody to play off of, or to critique us, or to, you'll pick up little different things. Like I went to a voiceover class here in New York, and there was like about 2 little things I took away, and that was take the headphones off.
Yeah.
Audition without your headphones on and see how that plays. And 9 times out of 10 now, I'll take the headphones off. You're not listening to that voice back at you. You're just being natural. That can help you actually be in touch with, more of your authentic self and give a more authentic read that way. By not listening to your voice as it's coming back to you.
You're not distracted by it, and you're not critiquing yourself along the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that takes you out of the read. The minute you're doing that, you're out of the read.
Right.
So this way, you're giving a natural read. But I think it's also, that imagination is, visualize who you're talking to and how you feel about certain things. I think Dave touched on this before about when he was talking about copy and maybe you don't agree with, because there were a couple of times actually where there was something a political ad that I was really forced to do because I worked for a radio station. Mm-hmm. And it was sort of, you got to do this ad. And I didn't want to do the ad. But I had to sort of, okay, well, do I want to make the boss happy? Do I want to?
Yeah, it's difficult.
Job? And you do have to sort of reconcile or use, some sort of method where, most, there are certain jobs that I will not do based on, just my ethics.
Yeah, I understand that. Sure.
Yeah, but you do have to use your imagination when you're doing these spots. It can't just be a read. It can't just be, they're not just words on a page, but you have to connect with the words.
Right.
Because if you don't, nowadays, it's, it doesn't ring true, and people are looking for that truth, that authenticity all the time in every aspect of this business and entertainment in general.
Yeah, that's very insightful. I like that a lot. That's a great piece of advice. Yeah, I actually did an episode on when you are asked to do projects that go against your ethics,
Yeah.
And if you're in the business long enough, it's going to happen. It's happened to me a few times. But, there's certain things, like you said, that you can put on the professional hat and say, all right, I'm a pro. I'm going to do this. And then there are some issues like yourself where I'll go, you know what? I'm just not going to do that. And for your set of values, and that's different for everybody, But
right, you have to be true to your own school, basically.
My dad always says you got to look yourself in the mirror.
Right. Well, you do, and you have to, and it's interesting. What I found is, for me, it's. You're a meat cutter, and you were.
No, I hear you.
Yeah, and I'm a vegetarian, for example.
Yep.
And, it was a process that, took time. It was first one animal was being cut out, and then it would go on and on and on. And so for me to sort of, it became, okay, well, if I'm continuing to engage in this behavior, then it's not really true. Then I'm conflicted. Mm-hmm. Anytime you can get rid of those little inner conflicts, no matter what it is, like whether it's using a product that you don't believe in or, whatever it is, you're stripping away that little piece of whatever.
Your authenticity.
Yeah, well, you're getting rid of that. Anytime you can have any. What am I trying to say here? I'm trying to articulate it in a way that makes sense. But when you can strip away anything that makes you not like who you are, mm-hmm. to get to the base of who you are and knowing who you are, and this is not okay with me, why am I continuing to engage in this behavior? Whether it's smoking cigarettes, it's bad for you and you want to quit, it's almost giving yourself an excuse to not like a part of yourself in a way. And I think anytime you can get rid of all that stuff, it's going to help you in any field. It's going to help you in your life that you can be, I'm not doing anything that's conflicting to me. Whatever it is, hiding a part of yourself.
Yeah, you want to be an authentic person to yourself.
And being true to yourself and being okay with yourself and feeling good about what you do and what you put out into the world. It comes across when no matter what it is you're doing, you feel good about what you're doing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It makes sense to me.
Oh.
I mean, I think you get to a point, it's like, you know what, I'm tired of trying to conform to what other people expect of me or want of me. And it's like, you know what, who am I to control what you want to do? Right. Don't do bad things. Treat each other with respect. And I think that's the golden rule, right? And you do that. If we all just did that, I think it'd be a lot simpler. But I work with a business coach, and he said, and I'm going to be kind of crass, but he said, you have to have the no asshole rule, and that means you don't want to work with them. And if people are acting in a way that puts you off or something like that, then you know what? It's not worth it, because not only are you taking away from your authentic self, there's a cascading event that happens emotionally, and we're going way off of this, but this is okay. No, I like the conversation. But you have to devote all that energy to coming to the decision of like, am I going to do this or am I not going to do this? And if I'm going to do it, then I'm not going to be happy about it. And then you got to say, you know what, I'm not going to do this. And if you're just upfront and true, it's like, you know what, this is not a good project or a good fit for me. I think it'd be better if you find somebody else, or for whatever it is, you're just going to take away all that bad energy that sucks the life out of you.
Right. And it's just energy that you're not free.
Right.
You're not clear and you're not completely focused. When you're not being authentic, it translates.
Yeah, no.
Whether, like, for example, an actor who has spent years being in the closet and hiding that part of himself or herself, and then, and being involved in projects and so forth. You always get the sense that there's something they're not showing you. You can, I'm using this as an example, and how liberating it is for that person to finally, be open about who they are. Mm-hmm. That's energy that they're not devoting to hiding a part of themselves. They're not on that set consciously thinking, I hope no one, I'm not revealing this part of myself. That's energy that you're spending, and that's true with everything that is better spent focusing on the task at hand.
Yes, it can certainly be something of that nature, or it can be something as trivial, and I'm going to do an episode on this, of cutting out the clutter. So I'm going to do a whole episode on this.
That's what it is. It's clutter.
Yeah. I'm going to do a whole episode on this because I read this book, and I'll talk about it in another episode. I don't want to do the episode here, but basically it was about these people who take a week for themselves and catch up on their reading and clear off their desks and I have an office upstairs in the attic, and I can tell you there was this pile of paper, probably about a foot high, with accumulated things that I wanted to read, and papers and invoices and all that kind of stuff. And it was such a mental drain to know that was up there. And it's like, yeah, I gotta go do that. But I don't really want to do that now because, I'm home and Anne's home and I want to spend time with her. And then, I got to do all these other parts of your life that you just almost kind of need a reset button.
Right.
And to get rid of all of that stuff, which is what I did earlier this month, back in January. Oh, wow. I don't mind going into the office.
Right.
It's gone. Or it's dealt with, I mean, it's been handled. So, yeah, like you said, that clutter, that energy that sucks away from what you want to work on, you got to get rid of all that.
Oh, it's so true. It's so true. Any kind of little block.
Still working on it. Plenty more to go, but...
Yeah, well, I think we're all works in progress.
Yeah.
We're all work in progress here.
If you can knock one or two of them down, then you're making progress, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, Monique, this has been great.
Oh, it's been great for me. I hope that your listeners enjoy it.
You know what? People love to listen to the podcast. They like to listen to good conversation, and there's been a lot of good information given. And
well, it's great what you're doing.
Oh, thanks. I have fun.
You're good at it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's a real outlet for me because I like to read all kinds of stuff, and then I like to share it with people. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes if you learn something new and you want to share it with people, and not necessarily anybody wants to hear it. And so for me, the podcast was kind of like, okay, I'll put it out there, and if people want to listen to it, they will. And if they don't want to listen to it, they don't have to. They
won't. There's so many choices.
Yeah. So, but for me, it's just become an outlet to share information and share thoughts with people and bring other people's thoughts into it. And I'm having a ball with it.
That's great. I mean, in this whole life thing, I mean, we're all going through this. There are no big tutorials about how we should be doing it. So I think we're learning as we go along. We hopefully learn from other people. We learn from our mistakes. We grow from the perceived mistakes. So we're just kind of going through this and learning as we go. I guess
Yeah.
Doing the best we can. I think we all do the best we can.
And I hope so. I mean, there are times where you kind of go, But,
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You just want to chuck it all sometimes.
Yeah.
And you just think, this is too much to deal with, or, blah, 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 blah. And I mean, I think it's comforting to listen to other people's journeys and experiences and realize that, you're not alone, that there are other people struggling or questioning or dealing with issues that you are. And, and there's I think another thing, a takeaway from listening to other people in voiceover or acting or radio is that there's no one silver bullet. There's no one way. What works for one person may not work for another person.
Yes.
One person's journey is completely different from another. I mean, we can kind of look at that. It's important to have a goal and to look at the horizon and say, this is where I would like to go, and what do I need to get there? What steps can I take to get there? What feels comfortable for me? Maybe what's uncomfortable, going into what's uncomfortable. But just, definitely setting goals for yourself and having a vision, I think, is very important.
Well, Monique, thank you. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way for people to contact you?
Oh, that's great. Just go to my website. It's www.monique, MONIQUE, Coppola, it's C as in Charlie, OPPOLA.com. And my contact info is there.
Coppola.
Yeah.
I said Coppola. I'm sorry.
That's okay. A lot of people say Coppola.
Coppola.
People say Monica, too, and it's Monique. I get that all the time.
I get John Mealy.
Really?
Yeah, I hate it.
Really, Mealy?
Mealy, yeah. I'm like, do you ring the bell? It's MELLEY. You don't ring the bell, you ring the bell. Anyway.
That's right, John Melly.
Yeah, Smelly Melly. Anyway. I still get that from people who think they're really original. I'm looking at them like, really? Yeah, I mean, what are we in 5th grade?
Oh my God, I know. I used to get Monique the Geek.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
So I figure I just head that off right at the pass. I say, yeah. Anyway, MoniqueCoppola.com.
.com.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, John Melly. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
That's it. So are we done now?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Big thank you to Monique Coppola for spending some time with us. What a great conversation, and what a nice person, huh? That was a great conversation, so I want to thank her again for taking the time to be on the show. So remember, before the interview with Monique, I asked you to stick around for something fun. I try and do some different things with the podcast, make it interactive, some fun, and for some cool stuff for you too. So if you go to the show notes for this episode 31, you're going to see that I have created a voice over word search. And you know what a word search is, but for those of you who may not know, a word search is basically a grid of letters in random order, but embedded within that grid are specific words. And there's a list of words that you can find in that grid of letters. And, the words can be left to right, up, down, diagonally, backwards, frontwards, whatever. The words are there. And this is kind of a tricky one. What you do is you fill that out, fax it back to me or get it back to me, and you'll earn a $25 Mike Money gift certificate. And you can use that toward my consulting services or some of the private audio recordings that I have on in-depth marketing strategies. And so just fill out the word search, fax it back, and you'll get that $25 of Mike Money. And you know what? Here's something fun I want to do. Here's something, make it even better. I have an audio recording of a mastermind group session that I did over a year ago, and it was a presentation on how to use your personal story in your marketing. Now, you may recall that a previous episode of this podcast talked about that. And let me look at which one was that? Let me look at my archives here. Episode 19. Episode 19 of the podcast was all about how to use the story. It's one of the most popular episodes in the series. And in that episode, I offered a free download of my marketing piece that I use with new clients. A lot of people have downloaded the item, and I still get people downloading it, even though the episode was published back in June of 2014. So what this presentation was it really drilled down on how to structure it, what components are in there, what you want to make sure is in your story that makes it a compelling marketing piece. There's a whole presentation on it. I have that audio recording. I normally sell that at $49, but I'll do something special for you. I'm going to lower the price of the recording to $25. Follow me. If you fill out the word search and you send it back, you'll get your $25 Mike Money certificate. So if you want to redeem the Mike certificate, you can get the recording for free. Make sense? Thing is, I'm going to limit the number of the recordings that I'm going to release at that price point to just 37. You got to be the first 37 people in to fill out the form correctly to get the certificate. And then if you want to redeem the certificate for that recording, you can do so. But I'm only going to give out 37 of them. If you don't want to redeem it for that audio program, that's fine. Save it for something else, another audio program, or maybe a consulting session with me. That's fine. And if you happen to turn your word search in after the 37 recordings are claimed, you still win, because you're still going to get the $25 Mike Money certificate. Go to the episode 31 show notes at voiceovermarketingpodcast.com. Click on the word search image on the episode 31 show notes page. Get the PDF, print it out, complete it, and send it in. It's something fun, trying different things. It's interactive, and it's got some cool stuff for you too. Just trying to change some things up and give you more value. Let me know what you think. Also, be sure to check out the Voiceover Marketing Podcast, the new Voiceover Marketing Podcast group on LinkedIn. Thanks very much for listening, and I will see you next week. I've got more episodes already recorded. Upcoming episodes, the delightful Jody Adler, also known as Auntie Jody. She's got a new book out. We talk about her book and how Auntie Jody, that character, came to be. And also recently interviewed Mark Grau from the legendary Mark Grau voiceover studios, and that was both were a lot of fun. And also I have some solo episodes sprinkled in there too, so a lot of good stuff. Please stay tuned. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next week. Take care.